What's the latest? Is Marco Rubio a legitimate candidate to take the second place on the ticket?
Well, you know, to really get an answer to that, you should have had Mitt Romney on the hub instead of me, because he's maybe the only one who really knows the answer to that question. There's just a lot of speculation that swirls around Marco Rubio and a handful of other Republicans. His appeal is obviously he comes from the largest swing state out there, Florida. He is a Cuban American, and the thinking is he might do something to help, make up the yawning gap that Republicans have with Hispanic voters. So, and he's also very charismatic, well-spoken, up and coming leader in the party. There are also questions, though, about whether he's really ready for this job or not, whether he truly would make the difference that people speculate on both of the Florida front as well as the Hispanic front. So it's far from clear. And I think that I was with a group of reporters that spoke at some length yesterday with Senator Rubio, and I think he played it very well. What he said is, he didn't completely close the door to it, but he basically said, this isn't going to happen. He said there are other people who have a lot more experience than I do, and he said that you guys, I'm the shiny object that everybody's paying attention to, but in a few weeks you'll all be on to somebody else. And so it seems to have kind of a healthy view.
Sometimes, though, Marco Rubio, can be guilty of putting his foot in his mouth, as he might have done during this interview. Let's take a look at it and hear what Marco Rubio himself had to say.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years from now, if I do a good job as vice president, I'm sorry.
You guys all got that, right?
As a senator?
You all got that, right?
If I do a good job as a senator instead of a vice president, I'll have a chance to do all sorts of things, including commissioner of the NFL, which is where the real power is. Yeah.
Laura, does it really matter ultimately who is the vice presidential nominee? I mean, even Senator Rubio himself said you pick a vice presidential nominee because the Constitution says you have to. But ultimately, do voters actually care who's the number 2 person on the ticket? Really, aren't they voting for number 1?
Yes, and that is almost always the case. There are the examples of where a vice presidential nominee made a real difference are few and far between. I think it's hard not to say that Sarah Palin certainly shook up the race both in positive and in negative ways for John McCain in 2008. There are examples of LBJ helping John Kennedy win Texas. But in general, Marco Rubio said yesterday if most presidential nominees had it their way, they'd probably just go it alone. But as he pointed out, the Constitution does require a running mate. So, it really most of the time doesn't matter. And what most of the smart people will say is that you should pick somebody who is both, ready to assume the presidency if that need should arise, and who can be a good partner in governing if you were to win. So, those are obviously, really important factors.
So, Laura, who else is being bandied about as a prospective number 2 on the ticket?
Well, you hear a variety of names. You hear Rob Portman, who's a senator from Ohio, Mitch Daniels, the governor of Indiana. Those are 2 Midwesterners, neither one of whom are, super exciting, but they are considered sort of solid picks. Then there are a couple other non-white candidates who they're thinking is that Mitt Romney might be looking at. People like Governor Susana Martinez of New Mexico. That's also a swing state in the presidential race, and maybe she could bring some of the same kind of appeal to Hispanic voters as people think Senator Rubio could. That Bobby Jindal, the governor of Louisiana, is sometimes talked about. Then there's Chris Christie in New Jersey, the governor there, although there are concerns, he's such a big personality, would he sort of outshine Mitt Romney? Of course, he, along with many others, has said he's not interested, which may or may not mean anything. So those are some of the names you hear. You sometimes hear Nikki Haley of South Carolina, Tim Pawlenty, the former governor of Minnesota, is sometimes talked about. He again would be in the category of sort of stay the course, don't try to shake things up. Not particularly exciting, but not particularly risky. So, a lot of this might depend on where Mitt Romney finds himself in August. Is he in a position where he really needs to shake up the race, or is he in a situation where he really needs to do no harm?